Zara had always been different from the other Valdorians on her home planet. While most of her people stood tall and proud with their 4 powerful arms, she was smaller and quicker. But what made her truly special was her heart. She cared about others in ways that confused her warrior clan. The Valdorians were known across the galaxy as the strongest fighters. Their planet was a place where only the physically perfect could survive. Every child learned to fight before they could properly walk. Weakness was not just discouraged, it was completely forbidden. Zara worked in the deep mines of Zirion 7, a dangerous frontier planet where precious crystals were found. She had volunteered for this job because it paid well, and she wanted to help her younger brother back home. The work was hard, but she was good at it. Her smaller size meant she could reach places others couldn't. That morning started like any other. Zara put on her mining gear and descended into the dark tunnels with her team. The crystals they were looking for grew deep in the planet's core, where the rock was unstable and the air was thin. Everyone knew the risks, but the rewards were too good to pass up. The accident happened without warning. A massive section of the tunnel collapsed, trapping Zara under tons of heavy rock. Her teammates worked frantically to dig her out, but when they finally reached her, the damage was already done. Both of her lower limbs were crushed beyond repair. The medical team on Zirion 7 did what they could, but they had to remove what remained of her injured limbs to save her life. When Zara woke up in the medical bay, her world had changed forever. She was no longer the quick, agile miner she had been. She was something her people had no word for except broken. The reaction from her clan was swift and harsh. Her own family, the people who had raised her, looked at her with shame and disgust. Her brother, whom she had worked so hard to support, could barely look at her. The clan elders gathered and made their decision without even asking her opinion. "You are no longer Valdorian," they told her. "Our people are strong and you are weak. You cannot stay here." They gave her a small old spaceship and enough supplies for a few weeks. No ceremony, no goodbye, no recognition of all the years she had served her people. They simply wanted her gone, as if she had never existed at all. Zara's first stop was the nearby planet of Christhia, home to the Zephyrhites. These beings were made of living crystal and were known for their wisdom and fairness. Surely they would understand that she was still the same person inside, just with a different body. But when she landed and requested sanctuary, the Zephyrite Council looked at her with their glowing eyes and shook their crystal heads. "Your energy is incomplete," they said in their musical voices. "We cannot allow broken energy to disturb our harmony." Disappointed but not defeated, Zara traveled to the hive worlds. The insect-like beings there were known for taking care of their own, no matter what. She thought they might understand the value of someone who could still think and work, even if she looked different. The hive queens examined her through their compound eyes and clicked their mandibles in disapproval. "Genetic defect," they buzzed, in unison. "Cannot risk contamination of perfect colony. Leave immediately." Planet after planet, species after species, the story was always the same. The aquatic mere people of Oceano said she couldn't navigate their underwater cities. The flying Terrans claimed she was too heavy for their cloud homes. Even the peaceful plant people of Verdania turned her away, saying her incomplete aura would disrupt their gardens. Each rejection cut deeper than the last. Zara began to wonder if maybe her people were right. Maybe she really was broken. Maybe she really was worthless now. Her credits were running low, and her old ship was starting to break down. The engine made strange noises and several systems were failing. She had enough fuel for maybe one more jump through space, but where could she go? Who would want her? That's when she saw the distress beacon from human space. New Geneva Medical Station was calling for any ships in the area to dock for emergency repairs. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, and Zara didn't know much about them. She had heard they were weak compared to most species, but they seemed to help anyone who needed it. With no other options, Zara set course for the human station. As her ship limped through space, she prepared herself for another rejection. At least this time, she told herself, it would be the last one. She was tired of running, tired of hoping, tired of being disappointed. The human station appeared on Her screens, a gleaming structure that looked different from anything she had seen before. Instead of the harsh military designs of her people, or the organic curves of other species, this place looked almost welcoming. But as her ship's engines finally gave out and she crashed into the station's docking bay, Zara closed her eyes and waited for the security forces to surround her. She had been through this so many times before. The questions, the stares, the eventual order to leave. This time would be different, though she didn't know it yet. This time, someone would see her not as broken, but as someone worth saving. The crash was loud and messy. Zara's ship slammed into the docking bay with a sound like thunder, sending sparks flying everywhere. Alarms started blaring and red lights flashed all around the station. Through her cracked view screen, she could see security officers running toward her damaged ship with their weapons ready. This was it. Another rejection. Another order to leave. Zara closed her eyes and waited for the familiar words of disgust and dismissal. She had heard them so many times that she could almost predict what they would say. But then something strange happened. Instead of angry shouting, she heard a calm voice outside her ship. "Medical team to Base 7. We have an injured pilot who needs immediate help." The voice belonged to Dr. Chen, the chief medical officer of New Geneva Station. While his security team kept their distance, he walked straight to Zara's damaged ship. He didn't hesitate, didn't wait for backup, didn't even ask what species she was. He just saw someone who needed help. "Hello in there," he called through the twisted metal. "My name is Chen. I'm a doctor. Can you hear me?" Zara was so surprised that someone was actually talking to her instead of just ordering her around that she almost couldn't answer. Yes, I can hear you." "Good. Are you hurt? Can you move?" These weren't the questions she expected. No one asked about her pain or her injuries anymore. They usually just stared at her missing limbs and made their judgments right away. "I think I'm okay," she said, though her body ached from the crash. "All right, we're going to get you out of there. Just stay calm." Dr. Chen's team worked quickly, but carefully to cut through the damaged hull. When they finally made an opening big enough for her to fit through, Zara hesitated. What would they do when they saw her? Would their kindness disappear the moment they realized what she was? "It's okay," Dr. Chen said gently. "We're here to help." Slowly, carefully, Zara pulled herself through the opening. She had gotten good at moving around since the accident, using her powerful upper arms to drag herself along, but she still felt exposed and vulnerable whenever strangers saw her for the first time. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. He didn't stare, didn't step back, didn't make that face of disgust she had seen so many times before. He just knelt down to her level and started checking her for injuries. "That was quite a crash," he said, running a medical scanner over her body. "You've got some bruises and cuts, but nothing too serious. When did you last eat?" The question caught her off guard. A few days ago, I think." "Well, that won't do. Let's get you to the medical bay and take care of those wounds. Then we'll find you something to eat." His team members looked uncertain. One of them, a younger nurse, whispered to another, "Are we allowed to treat unknown species? What if there are complications?" Dr. Chen heard them and turned around. "She's injured and needs help. That's all I need to know. If anyone has questions about treating patients, they can talk to me later." As they moved Zara to the medical bay, she kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Surely once they had time to really look at her, once they understood what had happened to her, they would change their minds. But Dr. Chen kept talking to her like she was just another patient. He asked about her pain levels, about any allergies she might have, about her medical history. He treated her injuries with gentle hands and gave her medicine to help with the pain. "Your species is new to me," he admitted while bandaging a cut on her arm. "Valdorian, right? Can you tell me if there's anything special I should know about your biology?" Zara was amazed. He was actually asking her opinion about her own body instead of just making assumptions. "We heal quickly," she said quietly, "and we don't react well to most sedatives." "Good to know. Thank you for telling me." Over the next few days, as Zara recovered in the medical bay, She watched Dr. Chen work with other patients. What she saw amazed her even more than his treatment of her. There was a human engineer who had lost both arms in an accident years ago. But instead of being cast out like Zara had been, he was using advanced artificial arms to repair complex machinery. He was laughing and joking with his co-workers, completely comfortable with who he was. Another human, a woman who couldn't see, was working as a navigation specialist. She used special computers that talked to her, and she could guide ships through dangerous asteroid fields better than most pilots with perfect vision. But how? Zara asked Dr. Chen one day. How do your people accept this? Dr. Chen looked puzzled. Accept what? People who are different, damaged, like me. Dr. Chen sat down next to her bed. You're not damaged, Zara. You're just different. Every person has different abilities and challenges. What matters is what you can do, not what you can't do. But my people say I'm worthless now. Every species I've met has rejected me. Then they're missing out, Dr. Chen said simply. In the few days you've been here, I've seen you solve problems that stumped my engineering team. You've helped translate for other alien patients when our computers couldn't understand them. You've been kind to scared children and patient with confused elderly visitors. How is any of that worthless? For the first time since her accident, Zara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Word spread quickly through the station about the Valdorian woman in the medical bay. At first, many of the alien visitors kept their distance, following the prejudices of their own species. But they began to notice something interesting. Dr. Chen treated Zara with the same respect he showed everyone else. He asked for her opinions, valued her insights, and included her in conversations. Slowly, some of the other station residents began to wonder if maybe they had been wrong about people like her. A young Zephyrite, visiting the station with his family, watched Zara help a lost child find his parents. Her energy doesn't seem broken, he whispered to his mother. It seems kind. An insectoid trader saw Zara working with the engineering team to solve a complex problem. Perhaps, he clicked thoughtfully, intelligence is not related to physical form. Change was slow, but it was beginning. And at the center of it all was one human doctor who had decided to see a person instead of a problem. 3 weeks had passed since Zara's crash landing, and she was feeling stronger every day. Her physical wounds had healed well, but more importantly, something inside her was healing too. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe she had a future. Dr. Chen noticed the change in her. Where once she had been quiet and withdrawn, now she was asking questions about everything. She wanted to know how the medical equipment worked, how the station operated, and most of all, how she could help. You know, Dr. Chen said one morning while checking her recovery progress, I've been thinking, we have a problem here that you might be able to solve. Zara looked up with interest. Someone actually wanted her help with something? What kind of problem? Communication. We get patients from dozens of different species, and sometimes our translation computers just can't keep up. Yesterday, a crystalline mother brought in her sick child, but she was so scared that she kept switching between 3 different languages. We couldn't understand what was wrong. Zara nodded. She had learned many languages during her travels, picking them up out of necessity when she was searching for a new home. I speak crystalline, she said, and hive tongue and Aquarian and about 8 others. Dr. Chen smiled. Would you be interested in working as our cultural liaison? You'd help translate for patients and make sure they feel comfortable here, Zara. Couldn't believe what she was hearing. A job? Someone actually wanted to hire her, but she started to say, then stopped herself. She had been about to say broken or useless, but Dr. Chen's expression told her he wouldn't accept those words. You're perfect for this job, he said firmly. You understand what it feels like to be rejected and scared. That makes you exactly the right person to help others who are going through the same thing. Her first case came that very afternoon. A young Terran had been brought in with a broken wing, but he was so terrified of the ground-bound humans that he wouldn't let anyone near him. He was perched on top of a medical cabinet, crying in his musical language. Zara pulled herself over to the cabinet and began speaking to him in Terran. "Hello, little flyer. My name is Zara. I know you're scared." The young Terran stopped crying and looked down at her with his large golden eyes. "You speak Sky Song?" he chirped in surprise. "I do. And I know it's scary to be hurt and far from home. But these people want to help you get better so you can fly again." It took an hour of gentle talking, but eventually the young Terran came. Down and let Dr. Chen examine his wing. As the doctor worked, Zara kept talking to the child, telling him stories about her own travels among the stars. "You made that look easy," Dr. Chen said later, after the young Pateran had been treated and was resting comfortably. "It wasn't easy," Zara replied. "But I remembered what it felt like to be alone and scared. I just didn't want him to feel that way." Word spread quickly through the station about Zara's success with difficult patients. Soon she was being called to help with cases that had stumped the regular staff for days. There was an elderly Aquarian who refused to take his medicine because he thought the humans were trying to poison him. Zara spent hours talking to him about his home under the seas, sharing stories of her own travels, until he trusted her enough to take his medication. A group of Zephyrite pilgrims had been in a transport accident, and they were convinced that their crystal bodies were too different for human medicine to work. Zara explained how Dr. Chen had treated her own injuries, how he had learned about her physiology and adapted his methods accordingly. "But you're not Zephyrite," one of them said, their crystal voice ringing with confusion. "No," Zara agreed, "but I was just as scared as you are and just as convinced that nobody could help me. I was wrong." But Zara's talents weren't limited to translation and comfort. Her years as a miner had taught her to think quickly and solve problems under pressure. When the station's main computer system started malfunctioning during a busy day, she was the one who figured out that the problem wasn't with the computers at all, but with the power distribution system. "How did you know that?" asked the chief engineer, a human woman who had been scratching her head over the problem for hours. "In the mines, we had similar systems," Zara explained. "When everything seems to be broken but nothing actually is, it's usually the power supply." Soon Zara found herself helping with all kinds of problems around the station. Her mining experience made her valuable in engineering discussions. Her knowledge of different alien cultures helped solve diplomatic disputes between species. Her strategic thinking, honed by years of Valdorian warrior training, proved useful in organizing emergency responses. Dr. Chen watched all of this with growing amazement and pride. "You know," he told her one evening, "when you first crashed here, I thought we were just helping one person. I didn't realize you were going to help us even more than we helped you." Zara felt her face warm with embarrassment and pleasure. "I'm just trying to be useful." "You're not just useful, Zara. You're essential. This place runs better with you here." During this time, Zara also began working with the station's engineering team on something personal, mobility aids that would work with her unique physiology. But instead of trying to replace what she had lost, they focused on enhancing what she still had. They created a harness system that used her powerful upper arms more efficiently. They designed tools that would extend her reach without making her dependent on others. Most importantly, they built everything to be lightweight and flexible, so she could still move with the quick agility that had always been her strength. "This is incredible," she said, testing out the new equipment. "I feel like myself again. Maybe even better than before." The young human engineer who had helped design the system grinned. "That was the idea. We didn't want to give you back your old abilities. We wanted to give you new ones." As word of Zara's work spread throughout the station, something remarkable began to happen. The other species who lived and worked there started to see her differently. Instead of avoiding her, they began seeking her out for help and advice. Hive mind trader who had initially refused to do business with her now regularly asked for her opinion on cross-cultural negotiations. A group of crystalline students invited her to speak to their class about survival and adaptation. Even some of the Aquarian diplomats, who had once considered her defective, began to respect her insights. But the most surprising change came from an unexpected source. One day, a young Valdorian arrived at the station with a broken arm. When he saw Zara working in the medical bay, his eyes went wide with shock. You're Valdorian, he stammered in their shared language. I am, Zara replied calmly, continuing. To organize medical supplies, but you're different. Yes, I am. Is that a problem? The young Valdorian looked around the medical bay, watching Zara work efficiently alongside the human staff. He saw other species treating her with respect and asking for her help. He saw Dr. Chen discussing a complex case with her as an equal partner. I don't understand, he said finally. Our elders say that people like you are worthless, but everyone here treats you like you're important. Zara stopped what she was doing and looked at the young warrior. She saw her younger self in his confused expression, the beliefs that had once seemed so solid now cracking under the weight of reality. Maybe, she said gently. Your elders are wrong. Everything changed on a quiet Tuesday morning when the emergency alarm started screaming throughout New Geneva Station. Zara was in the medical bay, helping a nervous crystalline patient understand his treatment plan, when Dr. Chen came running in with his face pale and worried. We've got a massive disaster, he announced to his team. The mining colony on Kepler 442 just sent out a distress call. Toxic gas leak in the main mining complex. Thousands of workers from 12 different species are trapped underground. Zara's blood ran cold. She knew exactly what that meant. She had worked in mines like that, knew how quickly toxic gas could spread through the tunnels, how little time everyone had before the situation became hopeless. What's the rescue plan? Asked the head nurse. That's the problem, Dr. Chen said grimly. The Galactic Rescue Council is arguing about who should lead the operation. Every species wants their own people in charge, but none of them trust each other enough to work together. Through the station's communication system, they could hear the heated arguments from the rescue ships that had gathered near the mining colony. The Valdorian war vessels wanted to use their standard assault tactics. The crystalline ships insisted on their slow but methodical approach. The Aquarian rescue teams claimed that only they understood fluid dynamics well enough to deal with gas leaks. Meanwhile, time was running out for the trapped miners. Someone needs to coordinate all these different rescue teams, Dr. Chen muttered, pacing back and forth. Someone who understands mining operations and can speak to all these species. Zara felt her heart start beating faster. She knew she was thinking something crazy, but she couldn't stop herself from speaking up. I could do it, she said quietly. Everyone in the medical bay turned to look at her. Dr. Chen stopped pacing. Zara, that's incredibly dangerous. And besides, do you really think they'd listen to you? I know mining operations better than anyone here, Zara said, her voice growing stronger. I've worked in systems just like the one that's leaking. I speak most of their languages and… She paused, thinking about all the rejection she had faced. I know what it's like when people don't want to work with you. I might be able to get them to cooperate. Dr. Chen looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll recommend you to the Rescue Council. 20 minutes later, Zara found herself on a video call with representatives from a dozen different species. The moment her image appeared on their screens, the arguing stopped, but not in a good way. This is a joke, growled the Valdorian captain, his forearms crossed in disgust. You expect us to follow a damaged warrior? Unacceptable, chimed the crystalline leader, their voice ringing like broken glass. Incomplete beings cannot lead complete ones. The Aquarian commander just shook his head, his gills fluttering with disapproval. We need a whole leader for a whole mission. Zara had expected this reaction, but it still hurt. For a moment, she almost backed down. Almost let them continue arguing while people died in the tunnels below. But then she thought about Dr. Chen, about how he had believed in her when no one else would. She thought about all the patients she had helped, all the problems she had solved. She thought about the young Valdorian who had begun to question everything he had been taught. You're right, she said calmly, and everyone looked surprised. I am different from you. I've been rejected by every species in this galaxy. I know what it feels like to be abandoned and alone. She paused, letting that sink in. But that's exactly why I'm the right person for this job. Those miners down there, Right now they're feeling abandoned too. They're scared and running out of time, and while you're all up here arguing about who's in charge, they're dying. The hive mind representative clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Continue. I've worked in mines like this one. I know that the gas will spread fastest through the lower tunnels where the Aquarian teams work best. I know that the main structural supports will need Valdorian strength to reinforce them. I know that the crystalline sensors are the only ones sensitive enough to track the gas through the rock. She looked directly at each commander on the screen. Separately, each of your teams will save maybe a few hundred people. Together, following a coordinated plan, we can save them all. The question is, are you willing to put aside your pride to save lives? The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Finally, the youngest captain, a Terran named Skyweaver, spoke up. I'll follow your lead, he said simply. My people are trapped down there too. One by one, the other commanders agreed. Some reluctantly, some with obvious doubt, but they agreed. The rescue operation that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Zara coordinated from a command ship above the mining colony, using her knowledge of tunnel systems to direct each team where they were needed most. She sent the Aquarian teams to the flooded lower levels, where their ability to work underwater made them perfect for clearing blocked drainage systems. The Valdorian warriors used their strength to reinforce collapsing tunnels, creating safe passages for evacuation. The crystalline teams used their precise sensors to map the gas pockets, finding safe routes through the dangerous areas. But the real test came when several rescue workers got trapped in a section where the gas was too thick for most species to survive. The tunnel was too narrow for the larger Valdorian warriors, too toxic for the Aquarians, and too unstable for the crystalline teams to navigate safely. I'm going in, Zara announced, suiting up in protective gear. Absolutely not, Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the radio from New Geneva Station. It's too dangerous. I'm the only one who can fit through those tunnels and still navigate them quickly, Zara replied, checking her equipment. My center of gravity is lower than anyone else's. I won't get disoriented by the gas as easily. Before anyone could stop, her Zara was rappelling down into the damaged mine shaft. The scene below was worse than anything she had imagined. The air was thick with toxic fumes, and the tunnel walls were cracked and unstable. She could hear the trapped rescue workers calling for help from somewhere deeper in the maze of passages. Using her modified mobility gear, Zara moved through the tunnels faster than anyone had thought possible. Her lower body position allowed her to stay under the worst of the gas clouds. Her experience in similar mines helped her navigate by feel when the visibility dropped to zero. She found the trapped workers, 2 Valdorians, a crystalline, and an Aquarian, huddled in a small air pocket. They were all injured and scared but alive. Follow me, she told them in their respective languages. Stay low and move fast. Getting out was harder than getting in. The injured workers couldn't move as quickly as Zara, and the gas was getting thicker. Twice, sections of the tunnel collapsed behind them, cutting off their escape routes. But Zara's knowledge of mine layouts helped her find alternative paths that the others would have missed. When they finally emerged from the mine shaft, the entire rescue operation erupted in cheers. Species that had been arguing just hours before were now celebrating together, united by their shared relief and amazement. The Valdorian captain who had called Zara damaged was the first to approach her as she was being checked over by medical teams. I was wrong, he said simply, his voice heavy with emotion. You are not damaged. You are extraordinary. Similar apologies came from the other commanders. But more importantly, the rescue operation had been a complete success. Every single miner had been brought to safety, something that would have been impossible without the coordinated effort Zara had organized. As news of the rescue spread across the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in galactic history, media outlets were talking about disability not as a weakness but as a different kind of strength. The young Valdorian who had questioned his elders earlier watched the news coverage with his eyes wide. He wasn't the only one. Across the galaxy, members of every species began to wonder if they had been wrong about what it meant to be whole. But for Zara, sitting in the medical bay of New Geneva Station as Dr. Chen treated her minor injuries. From the rescue, the most important moment came when he looked at her with obvious pride. "You know," he said quietly, "when I first met you, I thought I was just helping another patient. I had no idea I was meeting a hero." Zara smiled, feeling something she had never felt before in her entire life. She felt proud of who she was, exactly as she was. 6 months after the mining rescue, Zara's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The quiet medical bay where she once hid from the galaxy's judgment had become a busy hub where beings from dozens of species came seeking her help and advice. But the biggest surprise came on a morning when Dr. Chen rushed into her office with a message pad in his hands, his eyes bright with excitement. "Zara, you're not going to believe this," he said, practically bouncing on his feet. "The Galactic Council wants you to address them, in person, about disability rights and inclusion." Zara stared at him in shock. The Galactic Council was the most important political body in the known universe. Representatives from every major species made decisions there that affected billions of lives. And they wanted to hear from her? "But I'm nobody special," she said automatically, the old doubts creeping back into her voice. Dr. Chen sat down across from her desk and gave her the same look he had given her that first day in the medical bay. The look that said he saw something in her that she didn't see in herself. "Zara, in the past 6 months, you've coordinated the largest interspecies rescue operation in galactic history. You've helped establish new medical protocols that have saved thousands of lives. You've trained over 50 cultural liaisons who are now working on stations across the galaxy. If that doesn't make you special, I don't know what does." The invitation specified that Zara could bring one guest. Without hesitation, she asked Dr. Chen to come with her. After everything he had done, after all the times he had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself, she wanted him there when she took this next big step. The journey to the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral planet of Harmony was unlike anything Zara had experienced. Instead of traveling alone in a broken-down ship like she had so many times before, she was aboard a sleek diplomatic vessel with a full crew who treated her with respect and genuine admiration. When they arrived at the council chambers, Zara felt her old fears trying to surface. The building was massive, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and shapes. Representatives from hundreds of different species filled the Great Hall, their various languages creating a symphony of alien sounds. But as she made her way to the speaker's platform, something remarkable happened. The young Valdorian she had met months ago was there, now wearing the insignia of a junior diplomat. He nodded to her with obvious respect and pride. A group of crystalline students had traveled halfway across the galaxy just to hear her speak. They hummed softly in harmony, their way of showing support and encouragement. Even some Aquarian officials were present, including the very commander who had initially refused to work with her during the mining rescue. When their eyes met across the hall, he raised his hand in their traditional gesture of honor. When Zara reached the speaking platform, the Great Hall fell silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy were looking at her, waiting to hear what she had to say. For a moment, the old panic tried to set in. Who was she to address such an important assembly? Then she looked out at the audience and saw something that gave her strength. Scattered throughout the crowd were beings who looked different, who had been overlooked or dismissed by their own species. They were watching her with hope in their eyes, seeing in her a voice for all those who had been told they didn't matter. "My name is Zara," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced sound system. 6 months ago, I was nobody. I had been rejected by every species in this galaxy, told I was worthless because my body was different from what others expected. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I learned something important during those dark months. The problem wasn't with me. The problem was with how we think about worth and value. We've been measuring people by what they don't have instead of celebrating what they do have. She told them about Dr. Chen, about how one person's willingness to see beyond appearances had changed everything. She talked about the human engineer with artificial arms who could repair things that others couldn't even understand. She described the blind navigator who could guide ships through dangers that sighted pilots couldn't navigate. Every species represented in this hall has members who are different, Zara continued. People who don't fit the standard mold, who think differently, who have bodies that work differently. Right now, most of our civilizations are wasting that potential. She proposed something that had never been tried before, an interspecies network for sharing adaptive technologies and inclusive practices. Instead of each species solving these challenges alone, they could learn from each other. Humans have developed incredible tools to help their different members thrive, she explained. Crystallines have meditation techniques that help beings with anxiety and trauma. Aquarians have developed communication methods that work for those who can't speak traditionally. Imagine what we could accomplish if we shared all of this knowledge. The response was mixed, just as she had expected. Some council members were clearly moved by her words. Others looked skeptical or uncomfortable. A few seemed openly hostile to the idea of changing their traditional ways. But then something unexpected happened. The Valdorian delegation, which Zara had expected to boycott her speech entirely, stood up as one. Their senior diplomat, a stern warrior with scars covering half his face, spoke in a voice that carried across the entire hall. "The warrior Zara speaks truth," he declared. "Our people have been wrong to cast out those who are different. I have seen the reports of her actions, her courage, her wisdom. If we had not rejected her, she would have made our world stronger. We propose to establish the first Valdorian Center for Adaptive Warrior Training." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. If the Valdorians, known for their rigid standards of physical perfection, were willing to change, then perhaps change was possible everywhere. Other species began to speak up. The crystallines announced plans for research into adaptive resonance techniques. The Aquarians proposed new underwater cities designed for beings with different mobility needs. Even the traditionally conservative hive minds expressed interest in studying how different thinking patterns could benefit their collective intelligence. Not everyone was convinced. Some representatives argued that their species' traditions were too important to change. Others worried about the costs and complications of inclusion. But for the first time in galactic history, these conversations were happening at the highest levels of government. After her speech, Zara was surrounded by beings wanting to talk with her, to learn from her, to share their own stories of difference and struggle. A young Terran with a damaged wing told her how her example had inspired him to become an engineer instead of giving up on his dreams. An elderly Zephyrite with dimmed crystal formations thanked her for showing that age and change didn't mean worthlessness. But the moment that meant the most to Zara came when the young Valdorian diplomat approached her privately. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly. "Before I met you, I believed everything my elders taught me about strength and worth. Now I'm working to change our laws so that no one else has to suffer what you suffered." "You don't need to thank me," Zara replied. "You chose to keep an open mind. That's the hardest part." Dr. Chen found her later, standing on a balcony overlooking the council chambers as representatives from different species continued their discussions below. "So," he said, joining her at the railing, "what's next for the famous Zara, galactic advocate for inclusion?" Zara smiled, thinking about all the possibilities ahead. "I've been offered positions on a dozen different worlds," she said. "But I think I want to go back to New Geneva Station." Dr. Chen looked surprised. "Really? Why?" "Because that's where this all started. That's where someone first looked at me and saw potential instead of problems. I want to expand what we're doing there. Create a training center where people from all species can learn to work together, to see past their prejudices." "That sounds amazing," Dr. Chen said, "and I'd be honored to work with you on it." As they talked, neither of them noticed the small crowd that had gathered below listening to their conversation. Representatives from various species were already making plans to visit New Geneva Station, to see this remarkable partnership in action and learn how they could create similar programs in their own territories. 3 months later, Zara stood in the brand new wing of New Geneva Station, watching as the first class of interspecies inclusion specialists began their training. Humans worked alongside Valdorians, crystallines collaborated with Aquarians, and beings from dozens of other species learned to see past their differences. Dr. Chen joined her, carrying reports from their outreach teams. "The mobile medical units are ready," he announced. "Next week we start visiting the most remote and traditional communities in the galaxy." Zara nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. There would be many more rejections ahead, many more minds that refused to change. But there would also be more success stories, more lives transformed by the simple act of seeing potential instead of limitations. As she watched a young hive mind student helping an elderly Valdorian learn to use adaptive communication technology, Zara reflected on how far she had come, from a broken exile with no hope to a teacher and a view